Thanks for joining us today. This is our inaugural RadialSpark radio session where we're going to be having a podcast here talking about all things tech, but mainly focused on Salesforce, Heroku, consulting, war stories, fun things, AI, all the crazy stuff, all the buzzwords that you can think of. So if you hear me say we're making the Uber of something, like this is the show to tune into.
Don't say that. We're not going to be on that show. We're better than this. We're not going to be the Uber of anything.
Well, guys, just a brief introductions for the people that are on this stream right now. You've got myself, Michael Rockford. I'm the CEO and founder of RadialSpark. With me today, we have Justin Ludlow, CTO and co-founder. And then in the background, who's not on camera, but running the stream for us, we've got Peyton Gherkin, disc jockey extraordinaire, also partnership development manager here at our company. So we're just going to dive in with why you guys should maybe listen to us. So between all of us here on this call, we all have about 30-ish years of experience. Justin and I got started a couple of years apart, but my journey started back in 2011 at a previous company founded by my father-in-law. And I was going through college, trying to figure out what I want to do when I grew up to be a responsible adult. And I was a math major, dabbled a little bit in economics, business, astrophysics, and some other things. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with all these focuses. I don't know how I'm going to make money aside from academia, which didn't sound pleasing to me. Tried my hand in the finance world a little bit with a brief stint as a summer analyst at Royal Bank of Canada capital markets. Figured that was terrible. I didn't want to do that. But then my father-in-law brought up this Salesforce thing. This is back in 2011. And he explained it to me initially, and I was like, this sounds like a pyramid scheme. I don't know what's going on. What is this Salesforce? But I quickly got involved with a major financial institution, actually private equity management company. And my father-in-law tutored me through working with that on the back end, and I started coding immediately and absolutely fell in love with the Salesforce platform. It was one of the things that I really struggled with in school to figure out how do you bridge like real results with the code that you're writing in class with something that's going to be impactful. And with the environment back then, the ancient days of Apex and Visualforce, it was quite intuitive, and you could immediately see the impact of what you were working on. And so I immediately got hooked. Took that business from my father-in-law, myself, and then my wife joined us, his brother as well. And between the four of us, I got him out of this office at the top landing of the staircase, got our first office. And soon after that, I actually met Justin. And I ended up met him through a friend of ours who was also working for me at the time. And I stole him from Raytheon Missile Systems. And I won't do his intro for him.
Now, I was about to say, perfectly timed segue. Wait for me to grab the water and take a step.
I got it for a little bit. But so I picked up Justin. He was going for a second degree master's in post-bac. Second degree, sorry, not master's, but a second degree, computer systems engineering. He was already an electrical engineer, so not a very smart guy, as you can tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you are stealing my intro.
And we ended up just really getting along together, even though I was the owner and the boss, so to speak. There, he and I were up real late, working on some, amazing projects, some very difficult projects, and some very stressful projects. And we built a great relationship. And when it came time, a couple of years after we had met, I pulled him aside and I'm like, Justin, let's go do this for ourselves. We ended up splintering off, and I'll let Justin talk a little bit more about what we were working on. But we did a focus on Heroku, and then Justin and I took that company, founded RadialSpark back in 2015, and here we are today. However many years is that later? 2016, 2015, so 7 years later, 8 years later?
8 years later. Yeah, we've known each other way too long, Mike.
Way too long. And so it's been a hell of a ride, but both Justin and I started off on the ground floor as developers, worked our way up to solutions and technical architects, have experience in Salesforce core platform, MuleSoft, Heroku, you name it. We've probably done it in the Salesforce ecosystem. So with that, Justin, I know I took some of your thunder, but I'll hand it off.
Don't worries. So quick introduction for myself, everybody. My name is Justin Ludlow. I am the Chief Technology Officer for RadialSpark. I'll also be providing color commentary for these broadcasts. As Mike said, I met him at a previous company where I came in as a junior developer. My original background credential was in electrical engineering. Used that as a quality and mission assurance engineer at Raytheon Missile Systems for a while. But my passion has always been in programming. I have been a pocket nerd since I was, let's call it like 5 years old or so. I had my first computer before I was even 10. My dad built my desktop. I was playing games on DOS. And somewhere along the line, this was before esports, I was like, well, you can't grow up to make money playing video games, but maybe you could grow up to make money making video games. I'm going to learn how to program. So as a kid, I started doing that. And then like everybody, the mistake everyone makes in college, I was like, forget all that. My dad was an electrical engineer. My Boy Scout master was an electrical engineer. I'm just going to be an electrical engineer because I want to think about my future. So went to college, got my degree, did all of that. Got out of college after graduating, did have the always necessary ritualistic super senior year just for fun, and realized I didn't actually enjoy entry-level electrical engineering positions. I had my position at Raytheon Missile Systems, which was fun and fulfilling, but not something that I wanted to get up and do every day. I was like, why didn't I study programming? I should have done programming. And I got introduced to Mike through a mutual friend from college, came in, interviewed for them. I remember walking into that office, guys, this was a hallway with 4 closets. There was the poster on the wall, all your base are belong to us. And I was like, I found my people. I have to work here. And that was the end of it. Started working there like a week, 2 weeks later after that interview. I think I was staying in a long-term hotel just to get into town quickly. Started studying under Mike, who at the time knew more than me. And this is the only time I will ever admit to that. So everybody watching our first stream, you just witnessed a unique moment in time. But no, I studied under him. So when we were doing consulting projects for the company's customers, like he'd have me come in, I'd be an extra set of hands, sit on the meetings quietly, like learn what I needed to know, both about the business and about the technology end. And from there, I kind of climbed that corporate ladder, basically being the guy that would take care of the things that Mike might not have the time to do. He's like, hey, this came in, I need to focus over here. Can you solve this problem for me? We would divide and conquer, which leads us to, I think, the origin story for RadialSpark, which was, and I love it. It actually started over tequila answering a very simple question. How do we not work so many weekends? And for us, the answer at the time was Heroku. For any of you that remember the good like 2011s, 2012s, 2014 Salesforce, that was like the golden age of figuring out how to hack around Salesforce platform limits. How do you make Salesforce do something that it clearly wasn't designed to do so that you could fit all your business process in one place? And we have spent a lot of time doing that. But with that always comes like sudden surprises, things that come up towards the tail end of a project. We actually had a project that we were doing subcontracted with Salesforce, which I think underlined the issue for us, where there was a misunderstanding on data scale. We were asked to develop some stuff in Apex triggers, get it done in real time. They ran to go run production testing, and lo and behold, they're trying to process 12 million records in real time. Anybody with a Salesforce background immediately is raising their eyebrows, knows that's not something you can do. So we're like, okay, time to chain asynchronous execution context. We're going to have batchables call queuables, call batchables until the cows come home. And this process they want to have done in real time took like 48 hours to run, because it was like started on a Friday after business hours and it would wrap up on Sunday.
Yeah, but we redesigned the whole thing in 3 days.
So we redesigned the whole thing to do that in 3 days. And the fact that we were able to pull it off, I think, was impressive, which is why Salesforce was like, okay, you guys were godsends. But we were thinking to ourselves, like, okay, sure, we delivered, everybody's happy, but 48 hours to run a process is long. How do we make that better? And that was when we stumbled across Heroku. And, we were running the thought exercise. Well, could we sync the data to Heroku and use a Java application with multi-threading, break up the processing, get it done faster? And so we ran like an abstract thought experiment, did a prototype, and we were like, oh, yeah, we could totally process this way faster. And all of a sudden, we realized that Heroku was like this brilliant tool for expanding what you can't do natively on Salesforce. And tackling those needs. And so Mike approached me over tequila one night and was like, hey man, the other partners aren't really interested in this Heroku nonsense, but you helped me build the tech stack. You want to go start a firm that's going to do Heroku work? And I'm crazy enough to say yes, because I don't plan ahead. I just give me a cool problem with cool technology and I'm there. So that's my background and origin story, as well as a little bit of RadialSparks. And I probably stole some of that thunder from you, Mike, but consider it payback.
I mean, I think I think you probably left some details out, but we could definitely get into that.
I mean, go for it if you want to.
Nah, I think so. Let's just kind of dive in. It's like, why the heck are we here? What are we trying to accomplish with this? And so Justin and I, over the years, have done a lot of these conversational style enablements in person with Salesforce account executives. The audience that we're hoping to attract here isn't just for Salesforce AEs, although I hope that a lot of you guys will tune in as we start doing this more frequently and checking out the videos and shorts that Peyton will be working in the background after this is done. But the idea is that with our combined experience plus all the other people that we have at the company and all the different types of projects we've taken, like we a couple of times a quarter maybe at peak, and a lot of that's been disrupted since COVID. We would go on site to like New York, Chicago, San Francisco during world tours, during Dreamforce, Dallas, all over the country, and we'd sit down with different account executive groups and we talk about enablement. What is Heroku? How do you solve these problems? Like, what are some issues your customers are having? And we try to get creative with them and help them pitch new product or figure out why a customer didn't want to engage with the tool or what the objections were and how we could potentially do it better. And we feel, like, could be wrong, we feel we do a pretty good job at that. But there's a lot more, and there's a wider audience that we could reach. So Justin and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but like we started talking about this and spitballing it, and really we wanted to have a conversation. We wanted to just kind of do our thing, but like in an unstructured format or semi-unstructured format, and just talk a little bit about what's new in tech, what's new in Salesforce, what are some things that we're seeing, what are some common problems that people are having, architectural use cases, and we're hoping to reach audiences that we wouldn't otherwise reach, and hopefully get some engagement, people asking questions, and that hopefully we can answer on these types of calls, and also share funny stories, battle stories, funny memes.
Oh yeah.
And things like that. So Justin, I don't know if you want to get anything else out of this, but I think at this point, like talking about, maybe you could talk a little bit about what made you want to do this with me, aside from me, holding you at gunpoint.
Saying, hey, we got to make content.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I do think you hit it on the head, but I mean, if we're allowed to be transparent on this, I think what it comes down to, right, is for everybody out there listening, we're terrible at direct sales. This is what we do. We talk about our work. We talk about what we love, and we help people solve problems, whether that's Salesforce AEs or other partners that we work with, and help them identify, hey, here's how you need to talk to a customer. If they're talking about this kind of problem, here's a high technology solution that solves a problem you think is otherwise unsolvable. Here's what we do. And as you alluded to, Mike, like our primary whether you want to call that like sales or recruitment strategy to like make relationships, has been what we typically call a lunch and learn. It's like, we come out to you, we buy you lunch, you listen to us talk, we buy you drinks at a happy hour after. And I mean, that's great. That's all well and good. It's treated us well for years. But to me, this seems like the natural evolution of our chance to do this on our own terms for an audience that comes in and tunes in because they're interested in hearing what we have to say. And we can also target it to what we want to talk about, as opposed to maybe like a specific person saying like, hey, can you guys focus on this or hammer in on this for us? Now, if you guys have questions you want us to answer, please send it all. And we're going to have a thing at the end for you to reach out to us. But I think for us, this is just a chance for us to sell in the way we like to sell and talk about the problems we like to talk about, and hopefully leave an impression with you guys and make the ecosystem a better educated place and maybe a little friendlier and funner as well.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I wouldn't want to say we're like terrible at sales. We're just at that top of funnel, like cold calling. I mean, Justin and I have.
That's what I mean. We do not like lead gen.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, we're not mathematical. I mean, we're both mathematical engineer, astrophysics type people. And I think for the most part, what, you know, even though Justin will say, and you do say all the time, Justin, that, you know, I'm the suit and tie and you're the you know, the nerd with a capital N or whatever.
Business stuff to him. I don't want any of it. Don't send it to me.
But the reality, we just really like solving problems. And so we were like, you know, we started writing a lot of content and doing these lunch learns, and we're like, there's got to be a better way we could like engage other audiences and get people involved. So that's why we're here. And so just to dive in briefly on a couple of things we're going to cover, not necessarily all in this initial one, but like what you guys can expect going forward, because we're going to try to do these at least, you know, weekly, bi-weekly, stuff like that. We're going to go in a regular cadence. You know, we got the holidays coming up, so obviously there's always trouble scheduling this type of stuff, but we've got a lot of content we want to cover. And so we're going to go over real customer use cases with names, dates, you know, identities redacted, you know, unless we're granted permission to go over that. But we're going to go over white papers. We've got some articles we've drafted for Salesforce for the wider consumption. And Justin and I, even though we've worked on those, Justin, I know you always want to say more. So we're going to give Justin the chance to say more and talk more about, you know, hey, like you guys saw this article. What do these things mean? If you guys have some questions or want to elaborate in more detail. So we're going to do that with you guys. Industry news.
A real job to stop me when I talk too much.
Oh, I mean, I can't dopey slap you from here, but we got industry news. Like everyone's talking about AI. We're going to talk about AI in this week a little bit, and in the coming weeks, because it's actually not nonsense anymore. Like it's something that people have been talking about for 6 years, but really wasn't something, in my opinion, anyone who is looking to do a Salesforce project or build an app or something like that, it really wasn't mature enough for that level of people beyond like peak engineering to really engage with. Now with ChatGPT, its most latest iterations, and other LLMs that are coming out, it's going to be a big deal. And so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about other industry news that's going to be relevant. We're not going to just talk about AI just so we can get tagged and say hashtag AI. But it is a big thing now, and it's something that we see is really interesting and can have a dramatic impact on your Salesforce or Heroku implementations. We're also going to talk about partner tools. We're going to shout out to partners that we work with, people that we think that you guys should take a look at on the App Exchange. And for the most part, unless we otherwise state, we're not sponsored by any of these guys, but we'll list out a couple, you know, one or two a week, just to talk about, hey, you know, check these guys out. If you have this type of project or this type of need, we've worked with this before. It's a great tool, etc. And then, you know, some Salesforce updates as well. So we'll go over like the latest updates. Salesforce updates their product and platform 3 times a year. And Heroku, not on the same cadence, but when those updates come out and they're relevant, if they are relevant for us to bring up for the wider audience, we'll talk about them. And then, like I mentioned before, we're gonna have some funny stuff too. We're gonna talk about at the end. Like Justin, I got some war stories. We got some funny memes to share. So we want this to be like an enjoyable experience for everyone who's tuning in. And yeah, so Justin, anything else to add that I missed on that?
I think you've covered all the things that we want to talk about pretty thoroughly. Everybody out there, you're going to find I've got a rampant sense of humor. And so I'm always about the memes or the jokes. Even earlier today, the whole time he's giving his spiel, I've been noodling in the back of my head. The one that we literally heard on a call earlier today was the term admin on admin violence. And I'm working on the session. I'm not going to spoil anything. I want us all to laugh together. But just to give you a small taste of the kind of nonsense that we're going to bring to these is just some of the silly things you see happen inside of a Salesforce org. The funny names that people will give them like that, and tell some stories on like, okay, seriously, here's what you should be thinking about to prevent these kinds of mishaps or these kinds of like circular situations that are counterproductive. So I'll tell you guys, that's going to be a content-rich area for me. It holds a near and dear place in my heart. So look forward to that. But I think you did a good job covering it. Did we want to transition and actually go?
Yeah,
over,
let's. So what we're going to talk about, so what we're going to talk about now, and Justin, since you and I came up with the topic, but you primarily authored this. I'll let you kind of walk through briefly, and we're not going to read the article to you guys. There will be a link provided in the top pinned comment in the YouTube, along with the description of the article that we're going to have here. So if you guys haven't looked, we're going to have it up on the screen so you guys could read along with us. But if you guys haven't had a chance, that's totally fine. It'll still be relevant for you guys, but we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important and go into more detail than Justin was able to talk about in this short marketing article. So Peyton, why don't you pull that one up for us?
Yeah, I was going to say, do we want to have Peyton pull that up so that we've got that included in the video? And I'm going to make sure that I have my own copy of that as well.
Perfect. So again, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about AI, and in particular, we're going to be talking about how to leverage AI, utilizing ChatGPT, and it could be any other LLM, but in this case, we use ChatGPT and MuleSoft, and how that integrates to a wider ecosystem. So, Justin, if you want to give the TLDR version of what the article is about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So honestly, the entire thing that prompted this article for me was with the advent of ChatGPT and OpenAI, and AI has become a buzzword, just like cloud used to be. We're at that stage in the rollout of the technology where there's the mania around the buzzword, the excitement about it, but there's not necessarily a lot of clear, concrete information on, how do you start implementing it? How do you bring it into like your business tech stack, use it? We've encountered a couple people that have done some profoundly cool things with AI, whether that be assisting like code development and rolling stuff out, whether that be assisting with like content generation, curation, or even part of business process steps. But there still isn't a lot of content out there about like, how do I use AI now? And as part of a recent partnership that we've struck up, I would say formally this year with MuleSoft, something that kind of hit me as just like an inflection point was ChatGPT is an AI service, and it's not necessarily different in structure from any other LLM-based AI. But at the end of the day, all your interactions with it are done through API requests. Even on their UI, it's effectively just making an API call to the AI. MuleSoft is an integration platform specializing in multi-layer integrations that tie APIs together. And I just kind of had this, what if you wrapped ChatGPT with MuleSoft process APIs that then made ChatGPT available for use in a large number of systems? And as part of that, we can do some cool things like code in personas, adjust the way the prompts are interpreted and actually pass to ChatGPT for different business use cases. And you get to the point where this idea of how starts to take shape a little more clearly. It's like, okay, chat GPT by and large could be summarized effectively as like a single endpoint. You have your authentication to confirm you're a paying customer, but otherwise you're passing the AI persona, you're passing the question you want responded or the message you want responded to, all in the body of a request to a singular endpoint. It's a very simple implementation when you think of it as an API integration. And so in my mind, the idea here was, okay, you're trying to dip your toe into the pool with AI. Maybe you already have MuleSoft as part of a more elaborate technology stack. AI becomes a daunting concept to take on because implementing AI involves rolling it out to all the systems in your technology stack. And I was like, well, MuleSoft would solve that problem. And not only with that, but what you can do is, take their singular endpoint, break out a couple flavors of it where maybe you provide a customer service persona if you're actually using ChatGPT AI to help interface with customers, do case deflection, things like that. But you can also have a different endpoint that's a more engineering focus that's like, hey, we have a service outage that we need to address. We've got these inbound cases, but like I need some help sifting through the massive amount of logs to see if we can find what's going wrong in here corresponding to these error reports. And Mike, if you can't tell, I'm like very elegantly and very subtly plugging other articles that we're not talking about here directly, though this call out might ruin that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like you guys will see, we've written a series of these, and one will link to the other. But there's more, and we're going to talk about. We can obviously talk about more than just this intro one here. So, but yeah. So the TLDR then, Justin, is that how do I implement AI? If we have to make API calls to it anyway. So MuleSoft, but
yeah,
what was the big so what? Mm-hmm.
So to me, what I thought was compelling and why I put this article together, the big so what was if you don't think of AI as its own concept and you translate that to something that the business is more familiar with, APIs, integration, adding AI to your tech stack is now not this new scary frontier. It's just adding an integration to your tech stack, something that businesses have been doing for years, that IT teams are very successful at. And so what you end up focusing on with an approach like this, because for those of you familiar with MuleSoft's implementation strategy, MuleSoft is very elegant in terms of handling APIs and like facilitating requests. It's basically a visual flow paradigm, drag and drop programming, very elegant. So the actual implementation of your endpoint that wraps ChatGPT is very simple. All your brain power is going to go into what are the use cases that I want to surface for the different systems I have with this AI. Do I need to, design a persona that's going to inform the way the AI behaves and how it responds? Am I using this in a context where it's like, yes, ChatGPT, you're responding as part of a conversation? Or am I using this in a context where I'm saying, hey, ChatGPT, I'm getting an error in this class that I'm coding. Can you help me find it? Because you can ask it those kinds of questions and provide it the class, and it will give you very well-educated answers and usually find your actual problem.
Yeah, so this was
you spend your time designing that. That's where the brain power goes.
Well, and this is the thing that I felt was interesting, because if you look at this article here, we're talking about, in particular, like a retail use case.
Yes.
And Justin, you and I have gone back and forth about the benefits and detriments of like how do really, like, what is the end user experience going to be when you implement AI? Yeah, I can make API calls and pull data to and from, and that's great and all. And some of the people here tuning in might be zoning out because they're like, I don't know what to do with that. But the cool thing that I thought was leveraging AI as an assistant tool in a semi-automated fashion. We went back and forth between like, how do I build it so that this business process is fully automated, leveraging like ChatGPT or an LLM. So we use MuleSoft to construct the callouts, to build logical gates, recursive logic if necessary, to get it to pre-chew things. But I was like, I'm like, that's time consuming. It's hard to figure. Like well, like you said, it's like, hey, I don't have to invent AI, but now I got to figure out how do I talk to this thing? How do I sanity check what it says? Because sometimes ChatGPT, even with the newest version, comes back with what the people in the industry calls hallucinate. So it'll come back with something that it's straight made up and is inaccurate, or it'll come back with something like very oddly worded that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like it might be grammatically correct, but you would look at that. I'm like, I don't really understand what the point was that it's driving at. So it gets that 80-90% of the way there. And I thought the coolest thing was that hidden assistant for whether for the customer or for the customer service rep that was working on this.
So let's talk about that retail use case specifically, because you're right. I've been speaking in generic terms, and there's something I think pretty cool and compelling about this. So I guess, not to bury the hatchet, the starting point for this like theoretical use case we put together in the article here is actually very plain. It's basically replacing the chatbot on your retail website, like your e-commerce presence, with a ChatGPT driven AI. The coolest part about it is the way it evolves, because there's a reason we take this approach. And if you can't see, like, I'm leaning in now because I'm pretty excited about this stuff. So you start by saying, okay, I have my little ChatGPT process API. I've built in MuleSoft. I've made it accessible to my storefront. I'm in the storefront. I have a customer. And the use case that we included in the article was effectively somebody sees a shirt they want, and they want it in a specific color that is available, but it's not in stock right now. And so they go and they open up the little chat bot that's in the corner of every website these days. And they're just like, hey, I really like this shirt, but it's not available in the color I want. Like, when will this color be available? When's the shipment coming in? And now a lot of chatbots, if you think of the traditional chatbot, they're not really AI. They're on the rails, very much like an auto attendant on your phone line. You have pre-programmed options. Things will all route, but it's effectively dispatching. It's not intelligent response in a lot of ways. So here, because you have an AI, and because that AI can be aware of your other systems, if you implement it correctly, it can be something that it's like, okay, AI, customers asking, when is this shirt going to be available? What do you need to be able
let's talk about that, because if you look at the use case, it's exactly what you said, right? And I want you to read the whole article, but it's like you're replacing the chatbot with an AI or like you're enhancing the chatbot with AI and empowered automation. So customers going in there, it's like, I want this shirt, asks a plain test question. It's like, hey, when will this be back in stock? How do you then take that and go give it real information? Like, I think that's the thing. So it's like what? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and this is where I was saying all the brain power goes in terms of like designing your AI use case rather than actually just implementing the AI, because you think about, okay, what does the AI need to know to be able to craft an intelligent response as to, when that shirt will be back in stock in that color? And it's like, okay, let's assume Commerce Cloud, because we've been very heavily discussing the Salesforce ecosystem on this broadcast. So let's say you have Commerce Cloud and all your inventory is in Commerce Cloud. You have that hooked up by API. It's part of your MuleSoft network. So you can have it set up where the ChatGPT process API has the ability to call through to your Commerce Cloud API and, check what the inventory is, or like, when are the next purchase orders coming in. The way that you can affect that, though, is effectively take these call throughs from your chat GPT and allow them to be sort of language prompted by the AI themselves to trigger that behavior out. So it's like the customer asks the question to the AI, and that comes into the AI process API, chat GPT. And it's like, all right, chat GPT, the customer's asking, when is the blue shirt going to be back in stock? What do you need to know to be able to answer that? And then so ChatGPT is like, well, if we're completely out of stock on the blue shirt, the question is going to be, when is our next purchase order? Like, when is that shipment coming in? That's going to be in Commerce Cloud. We need to ask it. And so just by ChatGPT answering that, we can, interpret that prompt to trigger a call out to Commerce Cloud to say, hey, we are looking for the next shipment of these blue shirts. And we can pass all of that context. Like there's some behind the scenes magic that happens, like
Yeah, so let's
product identifiers and config to identify what a blue shirt is.
But for me, I don't trust AI like in this case, right? So like I know you can have GPT construct a REST call out.
Oh, I'm not even saying about having it construct a REST call out. I'm saying you have your process API set up in such a way that if ChatGPT is saying, we need to know when the next shipment comes in, you have a prefabbed call out that goes to Commerce Cloud and can be tied to your Commerce Cloud system or process APIs that basically says, I want the next shipment of this product. When is
right?
It
so what does GPT do to trigger that response? Like that's let's get into the details of how that works.
So I think the way that works, at least the way that I envisioned it in this article, is effectively some flexible dispatching from that response on ChatGPT. One, ChatGPT does have the power to say like in your persona, you can even define, it's like, all right, when this kind of request comes in, the persona you're pretending to be follows this process. And, part of that following that process can be, you get this information here by making this call out, and you're going to need to pass in the appropriate information. So by defining that in sort of the context of who the AI is acting as and what they should be trying to accomplish, they know, oh, customer is looking for basically when an inventory addition is going to happen. When is a purchase order being fulfilled? When's a shipment coming in? That means I'm asking Commerce Cloud. I know that these are the endpoints that I use to ask Commerce Cloud, and these are endpoints that already exist. Because if you're integrating your Commerce Cloud with other systems, like knowing when that inventory is coming in stock, being able to update, pass a purchase in from a separate platform so it can all be coordinated together.
So you're saying it's going to make it's going to make the request itself, or it's going to do something else to trigger, or is it going to go to the experience?
We have two ways that we could do it. Like theoretically, ChatGPT could be informed and know how to make the request itself directly within ChatGPT. But again, when we're talking about this AI API, it's not just ChatGPT, it's MuleSoft plus ChatGPT. So we can take a question from a customer, then we can ask other related questions to ChatGPT about the initial request to build extra context, do extra things. We can get responses from ChatGPT, and we can dispatch based on those, call it like prep work to set the table, if you will. And then the final question comes in after the prep work has been done and all the connections have been made so that you have your request go through. Commerce Cloud gets data, acknowledges the original request, brings it back. ChatGPT then knows, yep, product IDs match. This is the shipment date.
Right. But this is the question. This is the question people will, like that I get that people ask. It's like, well, how does it know? Like how does MuleSoft know, right? So like, because GPT can come back with, hey, where's my blue shirt? And it's like, okay, well, I need to know this information for that. Like, it's got to go talk to the MuleSoft framework at some point there. It's like, before it gets that, it's like, hang on one second, let me go find that out. Right?
Theoretically, ChatGPT in this architecture is always talking to MuleSoft because we're never making the call directly to ChatGPT. So
right.
Comes in, it flows through MuleSoft, flows to ChatGPT.
Right. So when you like, how do you control the responses? Because it like varies based off of like, just like different inputs. Like it's not going to give you the same exact answer every time, right? So when you want to build something that's logic gated in that regard, like how do you envision that? Because this is where like you and I like had debates on this, where I'm like, hey, this is where I want it like semi-automated, because it's for me, it's a lot easier for a human to be like, oh yeah, you didn't say the stupid thing. Like, how do you make sure it's guided, right?
So I was going to get into the semi-automated piece actually. In a second. You're jumping ahead of me here. Let's assume, for the sake of argument for a second, that the AI is not messing up, and you can trust its responses, and they're not going to be consistent, and you wouldn't want them to. Like, as long as it delivers the right information cleanly and clearly, a little bit of variation in your responses with each message just helps make the experience feel human. That's good. But,
Right, but how does MuleSoft?
AI is not perfect in that yet, which is where
I'm not worried about it screwing up the response. I'm worried about how does MuleSoft know what to do with that.
So I think a lot of that has to be somewhat pre-engineered inside of MuleSoft. Like, unfortunately, just with the nature of the way technology is, MuleSoft is a very prescriptive sort of if this, then that, do these things. But just like how a chatbot is effectively, an on-the-rails dispatched auto attendant, you can build some of those guardrails, those logic gates into your MuleSoft API flows. And that's how you tweak the persona and tweak the actions and where you're pulling the related source data. Because theoretically, what could happen is in MuleSoft, you basically have hey, when is this coming available? This comes in. The first request might just be to ChatGPT on this API saying, all right, we had a natural language request come in. Can you categorize this for me? And again, persona can say like, hey, I'm going to read this and I'm going to unify or standardize what's the kind of information I'm going to get.
So what you're saying is it's just going to
about this product ID. And then MuleSoft gets that back from ChatGPT, goes down a logical branch specific to inventory, then makes that request, does it, gets the data, passes it back with the context of the original customer question pulled forward and says, hey, what's the answer?
And you can even feed that back into itself too, because it says, hey,
times as you want.
So even if it does hallucinate or make a mistake, because the customer typoed and they type BLU and it sent that over and it's like, black for whatever reason, right? Like, I don't think it would. I think it would assume blue. But come up with some other example, right? Where it's like fat finger to color. It's like, where is this? It goes in. It's like, here's an inventory. This is it's an inventory request. It's this type of shirt. Here's the SKU because this is what they're looking at, because you can send all that parameters in from the experience API because the customer is looking at the website. So it's tied into that. So it knows what the product you're looking at for. You pass all that back and it's like, oh, well, we got the wrong color. Like, assuming it wasn't in the SKU, like they track it differently, right? And then it's like, oh, you mean this? The GPT is like, hey, this is when your shirt's going to be available, and send a picture. It's like, no, that's the wrong shirt. It's like, oh, let me go try again. Like, was it the right color? It's like, no, it's the blue one. And then you just go through that logic train that you mentioned before.
Exactly.
So there's definitely some engineering, but I think that's the thing, because it's like you talk about the high level of how we do it, but what I wanted to talk, like, instead of just rehashing what's in the article, is like, what's the nitty gritty? Like, how do you build those steps? Like, how do people see that? Because these articles are meant to, not to belittle them. Like, I think there's some good information there, but a lot of them to catch some attention, and hopefully you guys call us and ask questions. But here, when we review these, it's more like, this is how I would do it, or here's one way how I would do it.
So fair. Now, with all that said, and going into that level of detail, I got to be honest, we still haven't gotten to the part of this that I personally think is cool. And that's, so all of what we've talked about here, and you're right, there's some engineering and effort that goes into like designing the MuleSoft flow, allowing the recursion, getting it dialed in so it's perfect. And I'm sure any retailers listening to this, either live or on recording, will be like, we don't trust AI to just interface directly with the customer yet. And I get it. We started with this theoretical use case because chatbots are a very easily understood use case. And the work that we're talking about here, like designing those flows, dialing that in, because it's part of your MuleSoft API network. And for any of you using MuleSoft, you've probably heard of the 3-layer API architecture. Because it fits into that paradigm, what this means is this AI we've developed that has the ability to recurse, that has these logical branches. Like, we've talked about it in the use case of a customer is interfacing with this AI from the website. But it doesn't have to be that. All this logic, everything that we just talked about building, this is also available to your customer service reps in, say, Service Cloud. So a case has come in, whether that be through like social media, email, whatever. Maybe it's a case submission form you have on your storefront. Something's come in, there's some kind of problem. This very same AI can be exposed and interfaced in Salesforce using the exact same implementation to answer the same kinds of questions for people when they're brought up, directly through a different support channel. So whereas a chatbot is considered a support channel or a case channel. And if you don't engage with the chatbot, you get no benefit of support or case deflection from that bot. In this case, this AI is universal across your tech stack. So you implement this, and sure, you can use it directly with a customer and replace that chatbot. But more likely, if you're feeling a little hesitant to just give the AI free reign to interface with your customers, this is also an intelligent assistant for your service reps actually in the back office. And that's
my favorite part.
Automatic approach. And so what I thought was compelling about this is we started the conversation talking about like, oh, how do we replace a chatbot, which is kind of a commodity technology now. Like there are a bunch of them out there. Just about every website has it. And it's not considered impressive or high technology or crazy revolutionary as a concept anymore. So replacing one isn't considered high technology revolutionary, like a giant pivot. But the idea that like all of a sudden this chatbot is now also an intelligent assistant for your back office staff. So think like omni-channel meets chatbot meets a whole thing.
Well, here's
like
the thing that
support article.
Yeah, the thing that really got me, and this is where like the use case that I like in my experience when we're like, hey, let's implement knowledge for Service Cloud. And you build the knowledge and the tags and everything. And so long as the case is tagged properly, it'll automatically pull up the right knowledge article. And when you do all that stuff, it's super intuitive. When you do all that painful setup to set up knowledge, it's time consuming and expensive to metadata tag and just get all that stuff like hooked up. But for me, which is like, hey, if like all this work that we did just to like enhance this chatbot experience and try to automate and do some case deflection, it's like, hey, I'm slamming 0 on the phone, or I'm dialing in, or I want to talk to a human, right? For me, the coolest thing was that having a little window in your service console, like just like a little widget set up in a Lightning web app component, and leveraging that to just like if it's a phone call, transcribe the call live, which there's tools you could do that, and have MuleSoft go out and do that transcription, and then have that either periodically or by prompted by the case agent, or through just listening for keywords as part of the conversation, or being able to highlight that part of the conversation to do searches and have it go through that same logic tree. It's like, oh, where's the blue shirt and the blah, blah, like they're asking for it.
Absolutely.
And it's literally running it through. And it's like your case rep is sitting there, and instead of like having to go through tier 1 support and they don't have access to the ERP or for whatever reason, right, that you guys are using, like this bot does, and it could just pull in that information automatically and might be surfacing the right knowledge articles because the case might not be properly tagged yet because you don't know what it is.
Well, and
it's like boom, it's just pulling it up, and it does all this stuff automatically through that natural language processing. And I thought that was for me, like the bot bridge, so to speak, that we build constantly to like not talk to a human, and having AI like be better at that is cool. Like kind of passes the Turing test when you talk to GPT for certain things, and you're like, for it to ask questions is definitely valuable for like retail and other use cases. But when you actually need to talk to a person, and just having that like assistant there to like massively increase productivity, to do all the searching for you. Don't like, for those of us in the audience who have used Salesforce, right? Like who are any sophisticated Salesforce work, like how many freaking tabs do you have open in your Salesforce console or tabs up in your window? You're just sitting here like tab, trying to like, oh, I got to pull up this and I'm going to have these types of calls, and you're just going nuts. And this thing, it's like
a browser.
Yeah. Browser within a browser. And you're constantly, and Salesforce is trying to build that like experience where you have like contextual areas of the screen, so you don't tab up everything, but everyone still tabs up everything. And having GPT to be able to do that for you
earlier when you're done, because I hear you and I agree. Like, at least in my opinion, effectively the stated goal of like LLM based AI is like, how do you properly infer and categorize meaning from natural language, because it's not machine, it's very fluid. And so everything that you see in like a Salesforce knowledge base setup with metadata tags, that is like the manual way to do that. So bringing language model based AI to knowledge base, I think, is a very powerful thing because it eliminates the need for the metadata tagging, which is like the biggest overhead in that implementation. But, and this is because we can't have a stream where I don't disagree with you at least once. I would say this. You mentioned, right, when you call support and you're slamming on zero, I want to talk to a person, because you're right. We live in a community where I think everybody kind of subconsciously knows this is a bot bridge. They put this in place because they don't want to pay people to talk to me when they have a problem. If there's an automated way to solve it, they don't want me to bother them. And because we as a consumer base know that, slamming on zero is a thing. Like, it's a concept. We joke about it. We have a term for it. And so where I was going to disagree with you and make a point is, I do think that for the concept of like a support chat bot, for something like that to still be relevant and not just be a bot bridge where people slam zero to bypass it, more or
no, I agree. I know where you're going. It's like, like, it's like, it makes it more effective, and I get that. But even for those people who don't trust it, or it's just like they're going to slam zero no matter what, or they're just going to call in, like, you could still use the same infrastructure that you put together for that bot
to help expedite
everything else, because pulling up those articles or fetching the data for a customer service rep, in fact, is arguably easier, because they can be like, no, that's not right, and then they can talk to it and be like, hey, no, they asked for this, and they're like, oh, okay, no problem. And it's really going to change, like, honestly, it's really going to change how Service Cloud, I think, in particular, any person who's interacting with Salesforce live on a call, like integrating live transcriptions and LLMs to do research and pull stuff up for you automatically, is going to change how anyone does sales and service.
Yeah. What's the company? Like Firefly Note Taker AI, which just like you put it on a meeting and it listens in and it just transcribes. And in this case, it's like, transcribe the conversation, pass it in for context, and then say, hey, I noticed you guys are talking about this. Is this the article that has the answer you're looking for? Like, because that's a huge help.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's gonna get to the point where you're just gonna be talking to an integrated experience on Salesforce that is like, whether ChatGPT or any other LLM, you're just going to be typing to it and talking to it, or even just talking to it, and it's just going to be searching and surfacing up data on your screen live for you. And I think those are going to be the cool things that we're going to do with this. But we got about 10 more minutes thereabouts.
Yes, I told you, everybody. Mike's main job is to make sure I don't talk too much.
But no, I think this is like, again, like I want us to go into this kind of detail, and I don't want it to be just scripted, right? Like, we can all read this. Well, I mean, maybe I don't know about you, Justin. Like, I can read.
I'm more of a numbers guy. Okay. Leave me with the math.
But you guys could all read the article in your own time and whatnot. So we don't want to just talk about it. But like, the cool thing is just like, what are the thought process that, like, unscripted for us? It's like, here's how I'm thinking about it. And so if you guys are like, hey, could we use it like this, or have like other ideas that would come up, like, that's super helpful. And we can either draft an article about it or talk about it as a discussion point. But with the last 10 minutes that we've got,
I was going to say, does our boy Peyton have that screen for the reach out to us if you've got challenges and issues with the contact info? Do we have that up?
Well, I think Peyton had some. I don't know if we had time for questions for Reddit or any other ones that we had sifted in that we wanted to talk about.
We don't have any of those for today's session, but it's definitely something that we're going to cover on the next
one. Ladies
and
gentlemen, the brief viewing of Peyton. You can.
Yeah. No, Justin, that's something that I actually need to add in, but it will be on my to-do list. These are learning pains, growing pains. I guess.
Well, and this is the first one we're doing, and I think it's fair to say, we really did start this for ourselves. It's a selfish endeavor. This is what Mike and I like to do, and we're hoping that as we do this, more and more people will tune in, like what we have to say, have stuff to comment on, and contribute. So, with that said, if any of you were interested in what we talked about, maybe want to elaborate on something, get some more detail, if you'll reach out to us at engage@radialspark.com, we'll be happy to review anything you send our way, either bring it up in a follow-up broadcast or reach out to you directly to have a personal conversation if it's like a specific problem you want help solving.
Well, in the last couple of minutes, then I've got two things that we can talk about. One, you can talk about the thing you brought up earlier, where what was it?
Admin on
admin violence.
Yeah, let's
a meme.
do it.
The other thing we could do is we wanted to be educational, really quick. Since we were talking about how MuleSoft and ties into Salesforce, whatnot, we could also talk about like Salesforce security models, something a little bit more dry and drab, and like some of that's a big question that people don't understand that I see when they're working with Salesforce, is they don't understand the difference between data and metadata security and how that works in Salesforce. We can talk about that for 5 minutes. But
I actually think, if it's all right with you, Mike, I feel like that is something that would be a great conversation, honestly, for its own episode. I mean, and here's my reason why. For all the engineers that we've trained here at RadialSpark, like that's usually something where like we do a dedicated training session to walk through all the concepts as part of helping them get certified. And that there is a lot to cover there. And just this week, it was either, I can't remember if it was before or after Thanksgiving, the turkey was highly effective, but we actually have a use case that we could highlight where a customer that we're working with, they're going to stay anonymous for now unless we get their permission. They're looking at breaking out a business unit into a separate brand new Salesforce org. And with that, like one of the things that we've been talking them through and guiding them through is their entire role hierarchy has been designed around the fact that they've got multiple business units inside of a single Salesforce org. This new org, which is going to be dedicated to this one business unit, like the entire whole role hierarchy is effectively irrelevant. And so there is, I feel like, a lot of content that we could cover.
So let's talk about that next week. We got an active use case, and I think it's
let's end on a funny note, right?
Well, yeah, let's talk about the admin on admin violence, and then if we got time, like maybe a war story or two that's funny. But I like that because like we could just have a segment where we talk about it, because that's one of the things that people get tripped up on, regardless of the implementation. So we'd love to dive in that and make it a little bit more educational for everyone. But admin on admin violence, Justin, we just heard this today, and I was just like, oh my god.
I wish I could take responsibility, credit, ownership of this term, but it was not mine. It's one that we heard from somebody we work with, and I can't believe it's the first time I've heard it. I loved it. But effectively, the story here was this: because there's not really tiers to admins in Salesforce. Like if you have full admin access, you have full admin access for other users. If you've got login as user enabled, you also have full admin access against other admins. And I'm using the word against intentionally here because your Salesforce admins are typically going to be responsible for your permissions, profiles, security, all of that. And in this particular case that brought up admin on admin violence was the idea that this one admin had kind of gone rogue in a Salesforce org and started taking away all of the other Salesforce admins' admin permissions and setting them down to default users. And that was the context that this was brought to us in. And I've actually always thought that this was kind of interesting because
it's funny because when he brought it up, I've never before today
heard the term in that context.
No, but heard of someone actually doing that. Because we've had customers like, hey, we want you to migrate everything and write a bunch of code and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, we need access to your system. And they're like, here you go. And I'm like,
oh yeah, like sysadmin getting given out like candy.
Well, no, well, they give it out like candy, or the opposite. It's like they don't give it. And I'm like, dude, we're trying to like do this work. Like I need. It's like no, you can't. I'm like, it's a sandbox. I need a profile to do. Like I need the sysadmin profile in the sandbox. They're like, no, we can't give that out. And you're like, okay, well, I guess you don't want the work done. Like, it's like keeping the keys, like locking the door to your house and like not allowing anyone in. But
you're like,
they always talk about,
outside,
we're worried about
the door is locked. Nobody goes inside.
But they're like, we're worried about that, or someone will go in and they'll mess up all the data. And I'm like, no one's going to do that. And lo and behold, finally, the first use case where someone went in maliciously and was like, I was like, what? It was the first time in 12 years that I've heard this actually happening.
Well, I mean, and I've been working with you for like 9 years, almost 10 years.
Almost 10. To be 10 in like a month or two.
Yeah.
So,
and it's the first time I heard of that as well. But I just like the term in general because there's something to be said. And I actually, this is me planning ahead, Mike. I'm doing great content curation here. Admin on admin violence is totally a thing that's possible because unlike, say, a product like Slack, which is also owned by Salesforce, where you have potentially multiple admins on your account that can control channel access, everything else, but your Slack account also has an owner, and owners are above admins. And so you have this idea of, a person of, call it maximum trust, that it's like they get all the power. I rely on them. Like that's my safety net. And it could be something that, like, if you're the CEO of your organization, something like that, and you're not really doing admin activities, but you want to make sure you always have all the access you need to continue running your business on that product. Like this concept of an owner makes a lot of sense. Salesforce doesn't have that. And so, especially with the lack of attention that people put into permission allocation.
Well, let's not get this is no longer a funny story. Now you're going into the thing I was saying we could talk about.
Well, so what I wanted to get on was the fact that Salesforce really can be a bit of a battlefield, which is why the term tickled me so seriously. Is I was just like, yeah, admin on admin violence, because he was telling the story about admins basically demoting other admins and how that was a pretty big impact in their org. But
we've had stories where we've had admins where blow over other people's changes. Remember that? I forget the project. That's
literally what I was.
We were pushing a change set.
One of my guys.
Yeah, because we were pushing. I remember years ago. I can't remember the customer, but we were pushing. Because everyone was stingy with Salesforce user licenses because they're expensive. So it's like, all right, you guys use this one and share. It's not best practice. Everyone who's supposed to be an admin gets their own license. You guys share this one. We're like, fine. That works. They're expensive. I get it. But there was another partner that was also involved in that project, and they were just blowing over all of our chains. And we kept going like, they're like, all right, let's deploy it. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's broken. I'm like, wait, it literally was just working. It reminded me of that other meme.
You got flack for a customer for that once because one of my right hand man.
It reminded me of that other meme that I sent you the other day.
The what is it? Everybody has
testing environment.
Testing environment. Some people are fortunate enough to have a completely separate environment for production.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, in my mind, it all comes together. That's the concept because. So when I was talking to my architect, we have this small project that we're doing for a customer, basically the lightning optimizer and the security audit that's built into Salesforce, run the reports, do the action items that it called out. And one of them was turn off login as user for the admin profile because they actually don't recommend you being able to log in as other people. It's a bit of a security thing and impersonating other people, like the logs will reflect them. So
usually we just turn it off. Full copy sandbox.
So my guy had gone in and turned it off, and on his next report meeting, because we do a weekly cadence with all of our active customers, he's like doing the check-in and he's going through this, and the client side project manager was like, hey, we ran the report to make sure all these were done, and this still popped up, and he got chewed out because it wasn't done, and he was like, oh no, I definitely. He goes into the audit logs, of course, and he's like, see, I turned it off here on this date, and another partner with a separate admin user had gone back in and turned the permission set.
Admin on admin,
right? And there's a couple places that story can go because it's one of those left hand talking to right hand, a whole number of things. But I mean, that's the thing is like those people in that trusted permission set have an awful lot of power, and they all need to be aligned on the same page for things to move forward smoothly.
Salesforce best practices where they're like everyone is a separate user, and now you know why when admin and admin violence happens. But There's
admin.
yeah.
to
Well, I
involve
definitely we should have a future episode where we talk about that. But we're gonna wrap up here because we're
that's
about
fair.
the hour. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for those who joined us live. I'm sure we probably don't have many, if any. But for those who want to check this out, Peyton's going to be chopping this up into chapters and relevant segments, and then sending that out. You guys can find us on Twitter, YouTube, obviously, since we're here, our website. And then for those at Salesforce, we actually have a dedicated channel for you guys in Slack. So if you ever need to reach out to us, there's a Salesforce RadialSpark channel. Like, definitely hit us up. If you guys found this interesting or useful, please give us a comment, like, subscribe, all that other stuff that every YouTuber says. But guys, thanks so much. And we should be back in 2 weeks, and we'll do another one of these. So
Hold up. You forgot, Mike. Like we're official. Like we're on the social medias now. So remember to follow, like, and subscribe.
Bah.
Right? We gotta get those views.
Mash that subscribe button.
Mash that.
No, but yeah, next week we're
zero. Except in this case, make sure the zero is a subscribe button.
Well, next week we're obviously not going to do the intros again, so we're gonna have some more time for other pieces of content. So we'll be diving more into AI next time we meet.
Yes.
And so we'll have another article to review as well, and maybe we'll talk about that security overview thing, like do's, don'ts, kind of like take the joke of admin and admin violence and talk about like what are some best practices and how to avoid this. Maybe how does this affect your MuleSoft implementation, and go from there. But guys, thanks so much. Peyton, thank you for disc jockeying us here, and Justin.
All right. Well,
your beard isn't long enough still. I'm just saying.
Well, so here's the thing. We got to give the readers a reason to tune back in, right? So like, guys, here's what's going to happen. If there's anything you want us to talk about, like I said, reach out to us at engage@radialspark.com, because if you don't tell me what you want me to talk about, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about or what Mike makes me talk about. Now, every one of these we're going to do in a different room of my house, because this is my totally real office, if you can't tell. Next one might be my totally real library or chalet. So, check in to see that out. And then I will be growing my beard back out to wizard status, because it used to go down to the belly button, and it's been a while. So if you want to see the progress, like we'll have a chart. It'll be a whole thing. I'll stand up. The camera will actually follow me, so I'll be able to like put up a little thing, and we'll measure it together. It'll be a bonding activity, guys.
All right.
Now, with that said, we got to stop. Otherwise, we're going to run too far over. So thank you all for listening and tuning in. It's been great. Mike, any final words?
No, take care, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Thanks so much.